Hello, I'm Dorothy Kamboka, and I'll be taking you through the Italian Renaissance. First of all, I think I will explain what the term Renaissance means. The term Renaissance just simply means the rebirth, and this Renaissance period, as one of the cultural, is just considered, and I can say it's just defined as one of the cultural revival and renewed interest in classical antiquity after the centuries which the Renaissance humanists labeled the Dark Ages. And then the Italian Renaissance, it is just a period. It's a period in Italian history that covered between the 15th century and 16th century and developed a culture that spread across Europe and marked the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity. This is a period. It is a period in the Italian history which covered between the 15th century and the 16th century, and it also developed a culture that spread. This culture which was being developed, it was spread across Europe and marked the transition from the Middle Ages to the modernity. Although other proponents argue that it began in the 14th century and lasted until the 17th century, so there are some arguments in between there. Then we have for centuries, for all these centuries, the scholars have agreed that the Italian Renaissance happened between the 14th century and 17th century. This is about all the scholars. This is the period in which they have agreed that it occurred in those years. A new modern way of thinking about the world and a new modern way of thinking about the world and man's place in it replaced an old, backward one. This modern way of thinking about the world and man's place, it is replaced an old, backward one. In fact, Renaissance was a bit complicated. First, in many ways, the period called Renaissance was so different from the era preceded it. However, many of the scientific, artistic, and cultural achievements of the rebirth share common themes. Most notably, the humanistic belief that man was the center of his own universe. Here, we find that Renaissance was a bit somehow complicated, whereby there, in many ways, the period called Renaissance was so different from the era which preceded it. However, many of the scientific, artistic, and cultural achievements of the rebirth share common themes. These themes, most notably, the humanistic belief. These themes, most notably the humanistic belief that man was the center of his own universe. The man was the center of his own universe. And the next thing is about the Italian Renaissance from the 15th century. It was being divided into independent city-states, and each with a different form of government. From the 15th century, the Italian Renaissance was being divided into independent city-states, and each city-state which was being divided had its own form of government. Like a place called Florence. Florence is where the Italian Renaissance began, and was an independent republic, and it was also a banking and commercial capital after the third largest city in Europe. This place called Florence, as you have heard, is where Renaissance began, and it was the capital. It was the capital, and it is a commercial capital, which was following the third largest city in Europe, and it was the third actually, not following the third largest city. The first one was London, followed by Constantinople. Then the third one was Florence. Okay, and Florentines, the people from the Florence area, Florence city, flaunted their money and power by becoming supporters of the artists and intellectuals. People from this city, they become the supporters of the artists and other intellectuals, and in this way the city became the cultural center of Europe and of the Renaissance. Through this support from the Florentines to the artists and intellectuals, it made the city to become the cultural center of the whole Europe and of the Renaissance. During the Italian Renaissance, art was everywhere, and supporters like Florence Medici family. Okay, during this Italian Renaissance period, art was everywhere because there was support, and this support mainly came from Florence Medici family, who sponsored the projects, whether they were small or they were large, and successful artists became the celebrities in their own right. After these artists have been supported, they become celebrities in their own way, in their own right. They made money after being supported, and they became celebrities. The end of the Italian Renaissance, by the 15th century, Italy was being torn by one war after the other. By the end of the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century, Italy was being torn by one war after the other. The kings of England, here we have the kings of England, France, and Spain, along with the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, battled for control of the Welsh Peninsula. At the same time, the Catholic Church was itself rackled with scandal and corruption, had begun a violent crackdown on dissenters, and in the year 1545, the Council of Trent officially established the Roman Inquisition. In this climate, humanism was akin to heresy, and the Italian Renaissance was over. Okay, I think this Italian Renaissance was being started it began in the Florence city. It began by these Florentine people who offered support to the artists and the intellectuals, and it made Italy to be a city, a cultural center of Europe and of the Renaissance. Then, during the Italian Renaissance, as we heard, art was everywhere, and supporters like the Florence Medici family sponsored projects, whether these projects were large or they were small, and successful artists became the celebrities in their own right. And this Italian Renaissance was ended by just war after war in the 15th century. Yeah, that's all that I had. Thank you for your time. May God bless you.